Hello, everyone. I'm Priyanka Sharma. I work with Ebony, Jeff, and Jamie at World Education. And I'm here today to talk more about a professional development initiative that we did last year, and it still continues over WhatsApp. And next slide. And just to give you some context, I mean, I feel like as we get started today in this community right here, there's something to really think about how we're all beginning to center on community more, try to be more intentional when it comes to learning together, seeking help together, as we have seen in the increased engagement and even interest within the adult education, like teachers and um, and program directors and others during the time of COVID. One of the things that I think were used to sort of happen by design is us coming together and learning together, be in the hallways of programs, teachers' lounges, or just conferences or regional training events. And it has been fascinating and so uplifting to kind of see how people have come together in the past year. And we're going into almost a year and a half in this sort of pandemic and our response to it. There's been increased access and opportunity to learn online together through webinars like these, and open office hours on Zoom by training providers and PD providers. So we wanted to, we were in the same predicament that probably a lot of you are here, where we do really see the benefit of that in-person interaction, that really getting to know just somebody's role and kind of seeing what is it that they need help with, but then also thinking about really meeting them where they are and having them, have increased access to resources to enhance their practice. So what we did in this particular case that I'm going to present to you today was we had World Education, as some of you might know, is an international organization. We have a lot of projects outside of the country, and this particular project actually happened in Zimbabwe, and it's happening in some other countries in Africa right now, where the need was such, and the social distancing rules were such that we had to really move to all online in a very sort of low tech environment, which I think is kind of true in lots of parts of the country too, in the US as well. So what we did was we developed like a 5-day online training content into an online course. But that, I think, is something we're a lot more familiar with, is digitizing content for just increased access for teachers, where you convert an in-person training content into the online course. But then the other challenge we had was how to convert like deep in-person training, a lot of times with folks who are not either always comfortable with online course, or for especially a training where interaction between participants and the interaction between the facilitator and the teachers is a lot more, it's needed a lot more. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. And for that sort of dynamic online course, we quickly realized is not really going to work, because I think online courses, and that's another thing that I wanted to bring up, is as we're really thinking about digitizing content, we need to be able to have time and space to think about what modality might work better. And so we decided for a certain sort of training where there needed to be asynchronous contact was okay, and then where there was a lot more sort of reflective activities, that sort of training was converted into an online course. But then we had another training which used to happen for like 3 days in person, how to use a tool to develop and deliver training that is designed and should be highly interactive. And that's what I want to talk about today. So Jeff, next slide, please. So in this particular training, what we really needed to think about, and because it happened in Zimbabwe, but then, you know, this could be true anywhere pretty much, is what the access to devices were, since it had to be done at a distance. It had to be done over 2 days. And also thinking about the kind of time people have, and also the kind of access to internet, especially the speed and the reliability is key. Even, you know, that's a problem and a issue with households here. You know, if you have children who are on Zoom at the same time while you're on another Zoom, there was major internet bandwidth issues. So something that we really needed to keep in mind, and I think should always continue to keep in mind from an equity issue, since a lot of people rely on either phone only internet or have internet services that give them lesser of a bandwidth to access high sort of data usage content. And the other thing that I think really was key in this particular case, and it sometimes also comes into play, especially when it comes to learners, but also sometimes teachers, is just the digital skills and comfort of the training participants. So we kind of had to keep all that in mind. And since, you know, this is October 2021, we have been in this space for I don't know, 18 months, 15 months, seems like a lifetime. What I think we wanted to do differently with this particular this particular training, because, you know, a lot of you teachers, and, you know, feel free to put it in the chat, like either you or teachers in your programs have been using WhatsApp in a classroom context since years. To create community outside of the classroom, to provide access to extended learning for a class, and multiple other ways in which WhatsApp or similar tools have been used in our context. What we really wanted to do here is look at it from a PD perspective, and also think about how is it that we can customize the training and mostly develop a script so that the training is in fact digitized and can be converted into an online course in the future if needed, but then also really be delivered by multiple facilitators over a period of time in different contexts. So not sort of reinventing the wheel every time. So what I want to show you in the next slide, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the image templates and the other training facilitators piece, is the one sort of novel, I want to call it novel just because it was novel to me as I was working on this project. If you want to switch to the next slide, perfect, is the structure we developed for this training. And what we did was, when we worked with the team to develop the training, convert the training into a script and using WhatsApp, we wanted to pilot it with a small group, which we did. We had tons of learning, which I want to really talk about, mostly focus on that. But then we also paid close attention to what was working from a participant perspective or not. So we developed this training, and from a data perspective, it has been offered more than 10 times, and with a particular group size between 10 to 18. We have found out the hard way that anything more than 15 is hard to sort of handle, just because of the pace at which people respond to questions and are participating, and it's hard for a facilitator to keep track. So we have done it we really had to play around and learn from how long should a training be over WhatsApp. So we ended up, we started with, we're just going to do 6 hours, because this is something that they would have done for 8 hours with lunch and breaks in person. And we quickly realized that people were having screen fatigue, and they were walking away. Some people lost, their phones weren't charged enough, and so they had to drop out for some time as they figured out how to charge a phone. And this is also a different environment, so I think there was loss of power for some, internet connectivity issues for some others. So why this, I think, was fascinating is we had the fortune of having multiple iterations of it to get to where we got the training to be. And as I continue to talk, I would urge you to open the planning guide link that Ebony just posted in the chat, because that's what I want to walk you through, as and just quickly look at it together, and then I can go back to the learnings. Thanks for opening that, Jeff. And so what we developed, and this is, of course, not the actual document that was used for this project because that was proprietary. And so I tried to change a lot of the language and make the language, there's a lot of lorem ipsum type content in this document. So I apologize for confusion that might create. And sometimes it refers to case management and data analysis, which was the training that was developed. So this is just to give you a sense of how a training can be developed in a way that once you really lay out the design of it, it is a pretty sort of neatly packaged document that can move from facilitator to facilitator. So it starts with a training overview. There's tons of notes for facilitators because that was the assumption, was that it's not going to be facilitated by somebody like me who advised on the project while I worked on the guide. So if you go down, one of the things that, and then what we ended up having to do is that just because of the sheer number of participants in every group, we decided that it was good to have like a teacher's aide or a coach for every single one of the training, mostly because of the coach is almost like a digital navigator in this context. And what was interesting is that they had to make sure that people had the right group that they wanted to connect to, or just troubleshoot during the training, so they were not reaching out to the facilitator or the trainer for that sort of help. So there was a point person for the tech issues. If you go down a little bit more, what we also did was we made sure that we had, for the first couple of days before the training, that facilitators, the trainers, and the coaches had time to go over the script, just so that they knew what was happening. We shared the agenda. That's just the agenda for the, I think it was shared with the attendees as well. And as you go down, what you'll see is that we realized that just because it was a training that had so many moving pieces, which is true for a lot of trainings. In person, somehow we've all tried to figure out who's doing what and getting there on time and where to park. But what we found is that there was a lot of confusion as to what was expected on a training over WhatsApp, because this is something that was new for everybody. So we realized that we sort of had to work backwards from the training to make sure that all the moving pieces are in line. And I would highly recommend sharing this timeline with the attendees at some point, a simplified version of this timeline, so they know exactly what they should be expecting. Like for example, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that everybody was part of this group a day before the training started, like something that we didn't think the first time around. And that's something that I think we sort of had to think about later on, is making sure that everybody was connected a day before and they confirmed their presence in the group before the training started. Because what you'll see is once the training started, and a lot of it was a refresher for these caseworkers, but then they also had the ability to then share additional resources. And if you go down, this is like I feel like a very simple design. So my favorite part of this is that, Jeff, if you can scroll down a little bit more, what I think is interesting about it is just the way this document is laid out. So what we realized is just wanting to make sure that everybody was on the same page, we had color tags about what is a text, what is a space for participant response, where we're going to input graphics, how we're going to use voice notes, where we're going to use videos, and then there was general notes for the facilitator. So the way it looks as you go down a little bit more is just a sample of what some of the text looks like. It's all, of course, for this particular thing with a lot of dummy text, this is the content somebody would copy and paste in sequence. And of course, you know, we had one master document, but all facilitators used their own voice in the way they wanted to talk, and made it their own. So everybody sort of has their own personalized script, so it doesn't seem too canned. And they were able to post this on an ongoing basis. And then as you go down, you'll see that we were very cognizant about screen size, because that's another thing that really comes up. Somebody could be attending a training like this just on their phone, which most of them were attending it through their phone. Some were using tablets, and very few were using the web app. And if you sort of, so we kind of started with just getting everybody on the same page about our expectations. This is going to take this much time. This is, we're going to add you to the group. Please keep your phone charged, keep some snack nearby. And if you go down, Jeff, if you keep on going, what you'll see is that stop where you kind of see an image, that we wanted to make sure that we were using multi modal you know, opportunities for people to connect to it. And Jay, I can see your comment about the color coding and use of emojis and pictures. As a matter of you know, just clarifying that, we realized that emojis were critical to kind of so the intent of a particular ask was clear. So like welcome was clap. If there was like if there's a text in WhatsApp and there's a sort of image or a video underneath, there was always like a finger pointing down so that people know exactly what's happening. The other thing that is interesting, the color coding, on the other hand, is only for the facilitators and the trainers. That's not what learners see. What learners see instead is different things on their phone, like text appears as text. And Jeff, if you want to scroll down a little bit, but we wanted to even more, as you go down a little bit more, you'll kind of see that we, yeah, this is perfect. So what we did was we converted some of the text to images, just so that just gives, it just captures people's attention differently, and it also gives them something to look at, which appears bigger than like just text on a phone, and then something that they can sort of zoom in and out of to read. We wanted to make sure that the slide text was simple, but we also wanted to give them another way of accessing text that was just not, that was more than just sentences and paragraphs. So so that's something that I think, something that worked extremely well, is thinking about just rather than having long paragraphs of text, which we have seen used a lot in WhatsApp trainings, we really broke it up with text, then some graphics like this, and then similarly had voice notes as well for some particular activities by design, just to break up and just to get people's attention in a different sense. And then, you know, so you get the idea. And we did something similar with video as well. And Jeff, we can go back to the slide deck, because I think you can kind of see it just keeps on going. And on day 2, we had breakout groups. So we sort of added the breakout groups in the same script, but people knew what to do, etc. So feel free to copy this document, make it your own if it's helpful, and happy to answer more questions about this document, you know, in the breakout session or later. But so some of the learnings we had was the delivery format. Like we wanted some things, we really wanted to, oh yeah, this slide is great, Jeff. So we wanted to really think about how we were going to do this, like how much of this was synchronous participation and how much of this was asynchronous. We realized that we just totally wanted it to be synchronous. And we wanted, there was a lot of pressure from the field, in this particular case, the government, to think about doing it hybrid, so that a portion of the training happens over WhatsApp in that synchronous way, and then a part of it happens in person. Of course, that shifted as COVID got worse there. So, but that's definitely something moving forward in the future when we get out of the situation we're in. Something that they're really considering doing is thinking about it as a hybrid PD activity, with keeping some aspect of this training on WhatsApp and doing some other work in person, extending that training opportunity, also creating community. I mean, that's one of the huge advantages of a training design like this. By design, we made it so that people really got to know each other over a period of 2 days, with like interesting icebreakers and people posting pictures and other things. That most of these groups, and these were piloted, I want to say in March or April this year, and most of those groups are still together. They were sort of region-based groups, and they are used for nudging. They're used for, hey, like the semester is starting, are we ready to go? Or just encouraging people. So lots to learn here as you think about the guide itself and the strategies we used to just model it in a classroom as well, which I'm sure some of you are already doing. One of the other things we felt was duration was another key consideration. As I said, we moved it from 6 hours, and I think at the end we just had it for 3 hours with a couple of breaks, because we realized that I can talk for a while, but I think the kind of focus that people have on a phone discussion is even less, because there's other things popping and there are other notifications happening. So it was key to do it in bursts, so that we had everybody's attention, and the coach if the coach got that, Priyanka is not paying attention or responding, they would send a direct message to that person saying, hey, just making sure you want to, come back from the break, or just doing those nudges for continued participation. The other thing that I think probably a lot of you who use WhatsApp in instruction already know, but we wanted to, the way we did it in terms of the training logistics, and the reason why I think the script document works really well is that the facilitators or trainers always use the web version of WhatsApp, so that they're really it's super easy to just sort of copy paste documents and videos and photos into the app, rather than trying to do this on your phone. So that worked really well. So we made sure that everybody had the right sort of laptops, and they sort of knew how to copy paste seamlessly, because when discussions get started, it happens really fast. We had to be extra cognizant about file size, making sure that we used Google Slides, because if you do Google Slide and screen capture, those file sizes are much smaller than something that you would design in another Photos app, because it was slow to load in the context we were working on. And I think that's probably still true for if you want to use it with your teachers or learners, depending on the kind of phone service they have and where they are in the country and how the internet is there. Lastly, I'm probably over my time here, is that I talked about the multimedia use. That was just to make sure that people, we sort of retain people's interest in this. The last thing that I hear a lot is why WhatsApp? And I feel like one of our mantras at the EdTech Center is goal before tool. Like, we really looked at what is it that we were looking for, and WhatsApp seemed to fit the bill the most. It was something with our user-centric design. This was something that pretty much all of the attendees were already using for other purposes. This is something they already had installed, and they knew how to move back and forth within the platform. So that worked really well. And that's all I have. I'm happy to talk more and go deeper into any of these pieces if people have more questions.